Welcome back. Let's talk about the display property. By now, you may have gathered that it's fairly important, or maybe not. We haven't talked about it very systematically yet, but it is an extremely important property in CSS and probably one of the biggest sources of confusion and frustration. This is where CSS can get a bit more tricky. When you first look at CSS, you might think, well, there are borders and there's some colors, there's some background colors, all these really simple properties, and that's true, there are really simple properties. The thing is, when you're building a layout, when you're using text, CSS is just a bunch of text that's laid out as text is, top to bottom, and you're using all this text to design UIs that can be designed anyway. You can place all your elements in any part of the UI, and CSS has to be able to do this. So CSS can get fairly complex, but mainly when you get into layout. And that's what we're doing here. We're really getting into layout. That's what the display property is about. Another reason it can be confusing is that it has defaults. So there's a div that we have here that's going to have display block by default. We have these A tags which will have display inline by default, and P tags display block. There aren't that many display properties, but there are a whole bunch of tags, and it's not always clear which display property each one is using. Okay. So with that being said, with that preface out of the way, let's get at this challenge. Make the horizontal nav links, those are the A tags, these ones, have a bottom margin of 20 pixels. All right, so we can do that pretty simply. Go into our code here, horizontal nav, A, so all the A tags in horizontal nav, and we want margin bottom of 20 pixels. All right, did we get it? Let's say 200. All right, it is not working as expected. And if you just came from another lesson where we talked about this, that's because we need display inline block. Inline block. Hey, there we go. Passing test. And if I say 200, you'll see things really get pushed around. You can still see it with 22. With the value of 20, just using before and after. Anyhow, so we need display inline block here. And that's because by default, these A tags have display of inline, which doesn't allow you to add margins and padding vertically. You can do it horizontally, so we can come that out. We can say margin bottom 20, not going to happen. But if we say margin right 20, you see that we actually get that. So that's all good and well, and probably fairly confusing. So let's just use display inline block. And there is a rule of thumb, which is if you want something inline and you want to style it, just make it inline block. If you want it inline as in horizontally, you don't actually have to worry about what its default value is. Just set it to the value that you want. And the same sort of goes for block too. Most things are display block by default, but if you're not sure, just say display block. Just make it very deliberate. All right, make the horizontal nav links, all those A tags have bottom margin of 20. We did that, great. Make the vertical nav links stack on top of one another using the display property to make it vertical. So this is what I was talking about with display block. A tags can have whatever display property you want them to. Vertical nav, and say A, and little what? Background tomato. Great. So now we know we've selected the right thing, and we can put in the property we actually want here, which is display block. Hey, now they are vertically stacked, and you might be thinking, well, that seems odd, or you might be thinking that makes sense. Either way, let's bring back the background. Line, easier to type. And you'll see that these are all as wide as the page now. So there's no room for them to sort of scrunch up next to each other to go in to wrap into a line. They all are very wide, even though the text inside of them is aligned to the left. You can say text align, center even, and that you'll see that now we've got it in the center. We can say margin bottom at 5 pixels to see that they're not actually all one block, they're all these separate entities on the page. And there you go. So that's the introduction to display block, sort of. We're going to get into using the flex property later on, which is extremely useful, and you'll end up using it a ton for making layouts. But aside from that, these are the big two ones. So there are basically three properties that you'll want to know well, which is display flex, display inline block, and display block. And here we talked about display inline block and display block. All right, I'll see you in the next lesson.